The colony's automated defense system reported a meteor impact, but what Nolan found in the smoldering crater wasn't a rock. It was a translucent, iridescent egg the size of a basketball, cracked along one side, and something inside was moving. Nolan Carter crouched at the crater's edge, her small frame silhouetted against Outpost Epsilon's perimeter warning lights. Red and yellow pulses swept across her face as she leaned closer, holding her breath. The egg's surface shimmered with blues and greens that had nothing to do with the colony's harsh industrial lighting. "Attention colonists, meteorological impact recorded in Sector 7, announced a dispassionate voice over the colony-wide system. Standard protocols in effect. Continue normal operations." Nolan glanced back toward the prefabricated structures of Outpost Epsilon. Through the reinforced perimeter fence, she could see evening routines continuing, uninterrupted miners trudging toward the mess hall, researchers huddled over datapads, maintenance crews repairing filtration systems. No one looked up. No one noticed the small girl slipping through the perimeter gate that never quite closed properly. No one ever noticed her these days. She adjusted her backpack, fingers brushing over the emergency kit she'd assembled after Dad's transport had disappeared 6 months ago. The habit of preparation was all she had left of him now. That, and the ache that never quite went away. A security drone hummed overhead, its scanning beam sweeping the ground 50 meters to her right. Nolan remained perfectly still until it passed. She knew their patterns by now: the blind spots, the timing intervals, the sensor limitations. When you were small and quiet, you became invisible. Sometimes that was a curse. Tonight, it was an advantage. The egg pulsed with its own internal light, a soft blue-green glow that intensified when Nolan's shadow fell across it. The crack along its side widened slightly, revealing a membrane beneath the translucent shell. Something pressed against it from within, a tiny limb or appendage seeking escape. Nolan pulled her medical scanner from her pocket, last year's birthday gift from Mom, who never realized how often her daughter ventured beyond the colony boundaries. The device chirped softly as it analyzed the egg, its small display flashing with readings that made Nolan's eyes widen. Life signs detected. Pattern unknown. Cellular structure. Non-terrestrial origin. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Non-terrestrial. Alien. An actual alien life form right here in front of her. The first fat droplets of rain splashed into the crater, one landing directly on the egg's cracked surface. The membrane beneath pulsed in response, the movement more urgent now. In the distance, thunder rolled across Epsilon's perpetually unsettled sky. The seasonal storms were beginning, right on schedule. Nolan glanced at her datapad, quickly pulling up her mother's xenobiology database. No matches appeared for the egg's composition or the fragmented readings her scanner detected. Whatever this was, it wasn't in any colonial record. The rain intensified, water beginning to pool at the crater's bottom. The egg's glow flickered weakly as moisture seeped through the crack. "It's dying," Nolan whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. Without further hesitation, she shrugged off her jacket, carefully wrapped it around the egg, and lifted the precious bundle. It was heavier than she expected, warm against her chest. Through the fabric, she felt a faint vibration, a rhythm almost like a heartbeat, but faster, more desperate. Outpost Epsilon loomed before her as she hurried back, its concentric rings of buildings arranged around the central administrative hub. The medical facility where her mother worked dominated the inner ring, all gleaming equipment and sterile protocols. Nolan glanced toward its illuminated windows, then deliberately turned away. She couldn't risk taking the egg there, not until she understood what it was. The residential ring stood quieter, punctuated by the soft glow of habitat modules where colonists retreated after shifts. Nolan slipped between buildings, avoiding the main pathways where evening foot traffic might notice a child carrying a suspiciously glowing bundle. The rain plastered her dark hair to her forehead, but she hunched protectively over the egg, keeping it as dry as possible. Reaching her family's quarters, Nalin pressed her palm against the door scanner. It slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the empty living space beyond. A handwritten note sat on the kitchen counter beside a covered plate of food. Emergency surgery. Back by morning. Don't forget to eat. Love, Mom. Typical. Dr. Alara Carter saved lives while leaving notes. Nalin couldn't remember the last time they'd eaten dinner together. She carried the egg to her bedroom, gently placing it on her desk. The family quarters reflected their scientific background, her mother's medical journals stacked beside Nalin's books on xenobiology, specimen containers neatly labeled on shelves, diagnostic equipment charging in corners. On the wall hung a family photo, Nalin between her parents, her father's arm around her shoulders, his eyes crinkling with the smile that had vanished from the universe 6 months ago. His workspace in the corner remained untouched, dusty tools still arranged as he'd left them before that final transport mission. Nalin pushed the ache away. The egg needed her now. She gathered equipment from her mother's home lab, a portable incubation unit designed for tissue samples, environmental sensors, basic medical supplies. Working methodically, she constructed a makeshift habitat, referencing xenobiology textbooks for guidance on atmospheric composition and temperature ranges that might support non-terrestrial life. Oxygen content higher than Earth standard, she murmured, adjusting settings. Temperature approximately 32 degrees Celsius. Each adjustment was an educated guess based on the egg's composition and the minimal readings from her scanner. The egg's glow strengthened slightly within the improvised incubator. The crack widened, revealing more of the membrane beneath. Nalin leaned closer, adjusting her desk lamp for better visibility. Colony-wide announcement, boomed Director Harlow's voice suddenly, making Nalin jump. Security teams are implementing increased monitoring following unusual energy signatures detected near the impact site. All colonists are required to report any anomalous findings immediately. This is not a drill. Nalin's gaze darted to her window. Outside, additional security drones now patrolled, their scanning beams crisscrossing the pathways between buildings. Her heart sank. They were looking for the egg or whatever had been inside it. A soft cracking sound drew her attention back to the incubator. The egg's shell was splitting further, a small limb pressing against the membrane. It was pale blue and delicate, like nothing Nalin had ever seen in her mother's xenobiology texts. "Come on," she whispered encouragingly. "You can do it." The membrane bulged outward as the creature inside fought for freedom. With a wet, tearing sound, a small appendage broke through, not quite an arm, not quite a wing, but something in between. It was followed by another, then another, until 6 limbs had emerged. The shell fell away in translucent fragments, revealing a creature about the size of a small cat. Nalin stared in wonder. The hatchling's skin rippled with bioluminescence, shifting between pale blue and distressed gray. Its body was sleek and symmetrical, with 6 delicate limbs and a tapered head. Where wing membranes should have stretched between the upper limbs, there were only tattered remnants, clearly damaged. Large, compound eyes blinked up at Nalin, multifaceted and iridescent. The creature made a soft, chirping sound that tugged at something deep in Nalin's chest. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. But the hatchling's color was fading, its movements growing weaker. Its breathing came in quick, shallow gasps, chest heaving with effort. "You can't breathe our air," Nalin realized, quickly analyzing the atmospheric readings. Without hesitation, she adjusted the oxygen levels in the incubator, increasing concentration while monitoring the hatchling's response. The creature's color strengthened slightly, shifting from sickly gray toward a pale blue. Nalin smiled, her scientific mind racing. She improvised an oxygen mask from medical supplies, carefully modifying it to fit the hatchling's unusual face. Her fingers moved with precision learned from years of watching her mother perform medical procedures. "Attention all personnel," Director Harlow's voice announced again, tone sharper now. "Unidentified biological anomalies have been detected during the meteor impact investigation. All findings must be reported immediately for quarantine and examination. Compliance is mandatory." Nolan's stomach twisted. She knew what examination meant in a research-focused colony like Epsilon. Dissection, study, specimens in containers. She looked at the struggling hatchling, its large eyes blinking up at her with what seemed impossibly like trust. Decision made, she carefully closed her bedroom blinds. "They're not going to find you," she promised softly. "I won't let them." With the oxygen flowing properly, the hatchling's color shifted to a deeper, more vibrant blue celestial in its intensity, like the depths of space itself. "Celeste," Nolan whispered, the name coming to her instantly. "That's what I'll call you." She attempted to feed the creature, offering various substances from her mother's nutrient supplies. After several rejections, Celeste responded to a basic amino solution, lapping it carefully from a shallow dish. The positive response suggested compatible basic biological functions, despite its alien nature, something Nolan noted in the documentation system she created on her personal datapad. "Subject shows respiratory distress in standard colony atmosphere," she recorded, mimicking the methodical approach she'd learned from her parents. "Responds positively to increased oxygen levels. Nutrient absorption confirmed through modified amino compound." A security drone hovered outside her window, its lights painting sharp shadows across her bedroom wall. Nolan froze, watching as Celeste's skin brightened in response to her sudden fear. The glow was visible even through the blinds, a beacon that would surely attract attention. Nolan quickly threw a blanket over the incubator, muffling the light. Her heart pounded as the drone lingered, its sensors sweeping the building exterior. After an eternity, it moved on, continuing its patrol pattern. She uncovered the incubator, relief washing through her. Celeste chirped weakly, wing membranes twitching. The damaged tissue looked painful, torn and inflamed along the edges. "You're hurt," Nolan murmured, examining the injury. She retrieved a tube of cellular regeneration gel from her mother's supplies, a basic treatment for minor wounds. With gentle fingers, she applied a small amount to the damaged membrane. Celeste's skin briefly brushed against Nolan's hand during the treatment. A warm sensation tingled up her arm, followed by a flash of emotion that wasn't her own: fear, confusion, pain. The feeling was so sudden, so alien that Nolan gasped and pulled back. They stared at each other, human and alien, connected by something Nolan couldn't begin to understand. Outside, colony alarms began to wail, indicating an intensified security sweep. But in that moment, with Celeste's emotions still echoing in her mind, Nolan knew with absolute certainty that she had found someone worth protecting, no matter what it might cost her. Nolan jerked her hand away from Celeste, gasping as the foreign emotions receded like an outgoing tide. Fragments remained: hunger, curiosity, and something deeper that had no human equivalent, a sensation of stellar distances and weightless movement. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she stared at the alien hatchling, whose skin shifted from anxious yellow to a questioning purple-blue. "Was that you?" she whispered. The creature tilted its head, compound eyes reflecting the dim light of Nolan's bedroom. For 3 days, she'd been treating the hatchling's injuries, applying synthesized protein solutions to its damaged wing membranes, adjusting the oxygen mixture in the makeshift incubator she'd built from her science kit. Not once had she expected this. After a moment of hesitation, Nolan cautiously extended her hand again. This time, she closed her eyes, deliberately focusing on projecting calm, reassuring thoughts. "You're safe. I'll help you heal." Warmth flooded her mind, not her own, but a response. The alien skin brightened, bioluminescent patterns pulsing in rhythm with Nolan's heartbeat. The connection wasn't imagined. "I'm calling you Celeste," she said softly, remembering her father's stories about the celestial navigation systems he designed. "Because you came from the stars." The colony-wide announcement system crackled to life, making Nolan jump. Director Harlow's stern face appeared on every screen in her room, his perpetually furrowed brow deeper than usual. "Attention all Outpost Epsilon personnel and dependents. Effective immediately, we are implementing Level 2 containment procedures. This is not a drill." Nolan's stomach tightened. Level 2 containment had never been activated in the colony's 7-year history. Recent meteor activity has introduced potentially hazardous biological material to our environment, Harlow continued. "All personnel are reminded that Outpost Epsilon's primary mission is the cataloging and exploitation of unique mineral formations. Protocol 17 strictly forbids unauthorized collection or storage of biological specimens." The director's eyes seemed to stare directly at Nolan as he added, "Any violation will result in immediate detention and possible evacuation on the next supply ship." "Security patrols will be increased." Harlow out. The screen went dark. 6 months until the next supply ship. 6 months in detention, or worse, being sent back to Earth while her mother remained here. Nolan looked at Celeste, who had curled into a defensive ball, sensing her fear. "They can't find you," she whispered. "I won't let them." The maintenance duct in her closet had been her hiding place since they'd arrived at the outpost. When her mother worked double shifts, Nolan would crawl inside with her father's old engineering manuals, studying the colony's systems just as he had taught her. Now, she worked methodically to convert it into a sanctuary for Celeste. She lined the metal space with thermal insulation stripped from her emergency blanket. A small heating element, repurposed from her desk lamp, maintained the precise temperature she determined was optimal for the hatchling. She installed a modified air filter to ensure proper oxygen levels, and a series of small LED lights that mimicked the spectral output of Celeste's home star, a detail she'd extrapolated from the creature's photosensitive responses. On her datapad, Nolan mapped the colony's security grid, noting patrol patterns and sensor blind spots. Her father would have approached it this way: systematic, thorough, leaving nothing to chance. The thought brought a familiar ache, but also a sense of connection. She was using what he'd taught her. "Dad would have helped you too," she told Celeste, who watched her work with unblinking attention. The door to their living quarters hissed open. Nolan froze, checking the time. 700 hours. Her mother's brief daily visit between shifts. "Dr. Lan." Dr. Carter called. "Are you awake?" Nolan quickly closed the closet, heart pounding as she emerged into her bedroom. "Just Dr. Ting dressed." Dr. Carter appeared in the doorway, her colony medical uniform pristine despite her 36-hour shift. Her eyes, the same deep brown as Nolan's, scanned the room with professional assessment before settling on her daughter. "You're up early," she noted, then frowned at the open medical kit on Nolan's desk. "Are those my synthetic protein solutions?" Nolan's mind raced. "It's for my science project. We're studying cellular regeneration in different environments." The lie came easily, built from fragments of truth, the best kind of deception, her father used to say. Dr. Carter reached for the vials, examining their labels. "These are restricted supplies, Nolan. You should have asked." "You're never here to ask," Nolan replied, instantly regretting the edge in her voice. Something flickered across her mother's face, hurt, perhaps, but it v Dr. Shed as her communicator chimed. Dr. Carter checked the message, her expression shifting to professional concern. "I have to go. Director Harlow has requested my expertise for a biological anomaly investigation." She hesitated, then added more softly, "We'll talk about this later." As the door closed behind her mother, Nolan slumped against the wall. Her mother would be leading the search for evidence of alien life for Celeste. The stakes had just increased exponentially. That evening, while Celeste slept in the makeshift habitat, Nolan accessed the colony archives through her father's old security credentials, still active despite his death 6 months ago. No one had bothered to revoke them. Another example of how thoroughly he'd been forgotten here. She filtered search parameters to focus on Outpost Epsilon's establishment criteria. The official records cited unique mineral formations with exceptional energy storage properties. But deeper in the classified sections, she found something else: reports of unusual energy readings that peaked seasonally, coinciding with meteor showers like the one that had brought Celeste's egg. Nolan's fingers flew across the interface, correlating data points. Previous meteor impacts had been recorded but dismissed as instrument errors when investigation teams found nothing but crystalline debris. The pattern was unmistakable. Celeste's arrival wasn't random, it was part of something larger the colony had unknowingly interrupted. Despite Nolan's careful treatment, Celeste's damaged wing membranes showed minimal improvement. The synthetic proteins designed for human tissue weren't effective enough. Celeste's distress was evident in both her coloration, a dull, painful gray, and the waves of discomfort that occasionally washed through their telepathic connection. During one such moment, Nolan received a fragmented impression: crystalline formations glowing with internal light, similar to the mineral samples displayed in the colony's geological research center. The image was so vivid that Nolan gasped. "Is that what you need?" she asked, focusing on the mental image. "Those crystals." Celeste's skin flickered with a pattern Nolan hadn't seen before. Affirmation. The geological research lab operated around the clock, but shift changes at 200 hours created a 5-minute window when the lab was minimally staffed. Nolan had memorized this detail from her father's security protocols. At precisely 1:57, she slipped from her quarters, using maintenance passages to avoid the increased security patrols. The lab's secondary entrance required Level 3 clearance, but the ventilation access panel beside it only needed a standard maintenance code. Her father's first lesson in colony systems. Always look for the service access. Engineers build backdoors into everything. Inside, the lab hummed with analysis equipment. Nolan moved quickly, collecting minute samples of various mineral compounds, carefully logging their properties in her datapad. Each crystal was unique, with different energy signatures and molecular structures. A mechanical whirring froze her in place, a security drone making an unscheduled sweep. Nolan ducked into a supply closet, pulling the door nearly closed as the drone hovered past. Inside, 2 researchers were speaking in low voices. "Harlow's obsessed with those biological markers from the impact site," one said. "I've never seen readings like that, definitely not terrestrial. The energy signature is similar to the crystal matrices we've been studying, but it's integrated with organic material somehow. Whatever it is, Harlow thinks it could revolutionize our energy production. Carter's team is working around the clock to synthesize it." The drone moved away, and Nolan slipped out of the lab, her mind racing with new information. Her mother wasn't just looking for alien life, she was trying to replicate something from it. Through methodical experimentation over the next 3 days, Nolan discovered that a specific crystalline compound, a blue-green mineral with latticed internal structure, produced remarkable results when dissolved in Celeste's water. The alien's wing membranes began regenerating at twice the previous rate, and simultaneously, her telepathic abilities strengthened. Instead of just emotions, Nolan began receiving clearer impressions, simple concepts, and even rudimentary images. The first coherent thought came while she was changing Celeste's dressings. "Gratitude, friend." Nolan nearly dropped the medical implements. "You can actually talk to me." Simple. Learning. The concepts arrived in Nolan's mind without words, pure meaning transmitted directly. "This is amazing," Nolan whispered, documenting the interaction in her growing journal of observations. "Your species communicates telepathically, doesn't it?" "Yes, all connected. The colony-wide announcement system interrupted their breakthrough. Director Harlow's face appeared, his expression grave but eyes animated with barely concealed excitement. Attention all colonists. Due to potential environmental contamination from recent meteor activity, mandatory health screenings will begin tomorrow at 800 hours. These screenings are non-negotiable and will be conducted by section. Medical staff will test for exposure to potentially harmful substances. Nalin watched through her window as security officers distributed hand-held scanners to medical personnel. When one officer demonstrated the device, its display illuminated with the same spectral signature as the crystalline compound Celeste needed. They weren't looking for contamination, they were scanning for traces of the alien mineral. They know more than they're saying, Nalin told Celeste. They're looking for your people. Avoiding DRE health screening seemed impossible when Dr. Carter arrived at their quarters the next morning, medical scanner in hand. I insisted on handling our family's tests personally, she said, her professional demeanor firmly in place. Sleeve up, please. Nalin complied, watching her mother-doctor face carefully as the scanner moved over her skin. Dr. Carter frowned at the readings, adjusted the settings, and scanned again. That's odd, she murmured. You're showing anomalous neurological patterns. Her eyes met Nalin's. Have you been experiencing headaches? Unusual sensory phenomena? No, Nalin lied, avoiding her mother's DRE. I haven't been sleeping well, that's all, since Dad. Dr. Carter's clinical expression softened. The brain does unusual things when processing grief. She made a notation in her medical tablet. I'll attribute the readings to stress response. But Nalin, if you experience anything unusual, you need to tell me immediately. I will, Nalin promised, the weight of the lie heavy between them. As Celeste continued to heal, her color-changing patterns became more refined and specific. Nalin created a reference chart, meticulously documenting combinations of colors and their meanings. Blue-purple indicated questioning. Green-gold signaled contentment. Rapid pulses of white light expressed excitement or discovery. This systematic approach revealed that Celeste wasn't merely an animal with basic needs, but possessed complex cognition. She could understand abstract concepts, recognize patterns, and even express curiosity about human behavior. Why sad? Came the telepathic question one night as Nalin looked at an image of her father. That's my dad, Nalin explained, showing Celeste the photo. He died 6 months ago, an accident during an exterior maintenance operation. Still connected, not gone. The concept arrived with a sensation of vast networks, interconnected consciousness. That's not how it works for humans, Nalin said, wiping away a tear. When we die, we're just gone. Different understanding. Celeste's skin shifted to a contemplative blue-violet. Your species alone, separate minds, my kind together always. The revelation that Celeste's species shared a form of collective consciousness added another layer to Nalin's understanding. She documented this insight alongside her growing lexicon of color patterns. 3 days later, the colony experienced a series of power fluctuations. Nalin noticed they coincided with Celeste's growth spurts, particularly when the hatchling was developing new abilities. Monitoring the colony's power grid through her datapad, she confirmed the correlation. Celeste emitted energy signatures similar to the mineral formations when her biological systems were evolving. This created a dangerous complication. If colony systems could detect these energy spikes, security could potentially locate Celeste. Nalin worked through the night, creating improvised shielding using components from her father's old engineering project signal dampeners, originally designed to protect sensitive equipment from solar flares. Despite her precautions, a security drone hovered outside her window the next evening, its sensors sweeping methodically. Nalin froze, watching as its detection array oriented toward her closet where Celeste was hidden. The drone's lights shifted from green to yellow, the first stage of anomaly detection. No, Nolan whispered. Behind her, the closet door slid open. Celeste emerged, her skin pulsing with an intense blue light Nolan had never seen before. Before Nolan could react, the hatchling emitted a barely visible ripple of energy. The drone's lights flickered and went dark, its hovering mechanisms failing as it clattered onto the exterior walkway. "You disabled it," Nolan exclaimed, torn between amazement and panic. "But now we have about 15 minutes before they send someone to check why it went offline." Working quickly, Nolan retrieved the drone through her window, removing its memory core before taking the remains to the recycling chute at the end of the residential corridor. As she was depositing the components, a voice behind her made her jump. "Bit late for trash disposal, isn't it?" A maintenance worker stood watching her, his name badge reading Reeves. He gestured to the drone parts. "And that looks like colony equipment, not household waste." Nolan's mind raced. "It's for my engineering project. My dad was teaching me drone mechanics before the accident. I'm continuing his work." The man's expression softened. "You're Carter's kid. Your dad was Marcus, right? He helped me recalibrate the atmospheric processors when they were glitching last year." "Brilliant engineer." Nolan nodded, surprised that someone remembered her father's contributions. Reeves looked at the drone parts, then back at her. "Those particular models have been malfunctioning near the residential sections. Power surge vulnerability in their sensor arrays." He winked. "At least, that's what my report will say if anyone asks about this one." "Thank you," Nolan said, realizing she might have found an ally. "Marcus helped a lot of us. Least I can do is look out for his kid." He gestured for her to go. "Better get back before curfew checks." When Nolan returned to her quarters, she found Dr. Mother sitting at the kitchen table, her face drawn with exhaustion. Doctor, Arthur rarely returned home before Nolan was asleep. "Mom. Is everything okay?" Dr. Carter rubbed her temples. "Director Harlow has the entire medical team working impossible hours. This biological anomaly investigation has become doctor obsession for him." Nolan carefully sat across from her mother. "What kind of anomaly?" Dr. Carter hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "I shouldn't tell you this, but..." The meteor contained traces of an energy-rich biological compound unlike anything we've documented. It could revolutionize fuel production if we can synthesize it. She looked directly at Nolan. "Harlow doesn't care about the scientific implications, just the commercial applications and how it will advance his career." The revelation that the colony's interest was exploitation rather than scientific investigation created a knot in Nolan's stomach. Her mother was unwittingly helping hunt Celeste's kind for profit. "What will happen if you find the Sodiari?" Nolan asked carefully. "Standard xenobiology protocols would require preservation and study," Dr. Carter said. "But Harlow's pushing for accelerated analysis, which would likely destroy any living samples." Before Nolan could respond, the colony announcement system activated. "Attention all personnel. A scheduled energy grid shutdown will occur tomorrow at 900 hours for system upgrades. All non-Doctor Intel operations will be suspended for approximately 6 hours. Emergency systems will remain operational." Dr. Carter frowned. "That's odd. There was nothing about this in the department briefing." Nolan recognized the true purpose immediately. Her father had designed similar upgrades for the previous outpost pattern-seeking energy scans capable of detecting biological anomalies by temporarily removing background energy signatures. With 24 hours until the scan, she needed to move Celeste beyond its radius. The abandoned survey outpost 5 kilometers beyond the colony perimeter seemed the only option. It had been established during initial planetary assessment, but decommissioned when the main colony was built. According to her father's files, it still had basic life support systems that cycled on periodically for maintenance. Nolan prepared through the night, packing supplies and plotting a route that avoided security checkpoints. Before dawn, She carefully transferred Celeste into a modified specimen container with appropriate environmental controls, then slipped out through the maintenance passages. They were halfway to the outpost when Nolan heard the hum of an approaching security patrol. 2 officers on hover bikes were making an unscheduled sweep of the perimeter. With no time to hide, Nolan froze, clutching the container with Celeste inside. As the officers approached, something extraordinary happened. Celeste's skin, visible through the container's transparent section, shifted color and pattern, perfectly matching Nolan's jacket. The camouflage was so complete that when the officers stopped to check her authorization, they never even noticed the container she held. Residential dependents aren't allowed this far from the colony without supervision, one officer said, checking her ID. Especially with the recent security protocols. I'm collecting mineral samples for my science project, Nolan explained, showing the sample case a doctor, ched to her belt a deliberate misdirection from the container in her arms. My mother approved it. You can check with Dr. Carter in medical. The officers exchanged glances, clearly reluctant to bother the colony's chief medical officer over a child science project. Be back within the perimeter by 800. Security protocols increase after that. As they moved away, Nolan looked down at Celeste in amazement. You can camouflage yourself. That's how your species evades predators, isn't it? Protection adaptation, came the response, along with a sense of ancestral knowledge. The survey outpost was a small, dome-shaped structure partially covered by native vegetation. Inside, dust covered abandoned equipment, but the environmental systems hummed to life as they entered. Nolan set up a temporary habitat for Celeste, then began exploring. In the outpost's data terminal, she discovered equipment logs dating back before the colony's establishment. The records showed energy anomalies coinciding with meteor shower seasons, some from over 15 years ago. A research team had investigated, but their findings were classified and removed from the main database. As Nolan scrolled through the fragmentary records, Celeste suddenly became agitated, her skin flashing with urgent patterns. Through their telepathic connection came a powerful impression: multiple eggs traveling through space, separated during atmospheric entry. Celestial navigation coordinates, a sense of others distant but connected. You weren't alone, Nolan realized. There were more eggs. A whole clutch of them. Family group. Scattered, still alive. Sense them. The implications were staggering. Celeste wasn't an accident or isolated case. She was part of a deliberate migration, a species that used meteor showers as cover for their egg dispersal. As they returned to the colony perimeter, keeping to the shadows of the rocky outcroppings, Nolan spotted a security transport speeding toward a distant location. Through her father's binoculars, she watched Director Harlow's team recovering something from a remote crater, another damaged egg, similar to Celeste's. The team's handling was rough, their containment procedures designed for specimens, not living beings. They placed the egg in a reinforced case, scanning it with equipment Nolan recognized from her mother's lab designed to measure energy signatures, not preserve life. Beside her, Celeste trembled, her skin paling to an ashen gray. Through their connection, Nolan felt a faint consciousness distress, confusion, fear emanating from the captured egg. Celeste was sensing her siblings' terror. They don't know it's alive, Nolan whispered, a cold grit settling over her. We have to help. When they finally reached her quarters, Nolan found her mother waiting in her bedroom, holding the journal where she had meticulously documented Celeste's care. The color PAT-DRN reference chart, the telepathic communication logs, everything. I found this while looking for my missing medical supplies, Dr. Carter said quietly. I've suspected something was happening for days, but I waited for you to trust me enough to tell me. Before Nolan could explain, Celeste emerged from the specimen caught Dr. drawn by Nolan's distress. The hatchling's skin cycled through colors fear, uncertainty, and then a determined blue as she approached Dr. Carter. Dr. Lan watched in astonishment as Celeste extended a delicate limb toward her mother. "She wants to connect with you," Nalan explained. "To show you." Dr. Carter hesitated, her scientific training warring with maternal concern. "Nalan, do you understand what you've done? This creature, her name is Celeste," Nalan interrupted. "And she's no doctor, just a specimen. She's intelligent, she feels, she communicates. And right now, her sibling is being treated like a lab sample in Harlow's research facility." Dr. Carter's expression shifted from shock to concern as Celeste established telepathic contact. The doctor gasped, her eyes widening as alien impressions flowed into her mind: the journey through space, the crash, the pain and fear, and then Nalan's gentle care, the growing trust, the healing. The moment of connection was shattered by colony-wide alarms. Emergency lights bathed the room in pulsating red as Director Harlow's voice echoed through the announcement system. "Attenti doctor, all personnel. Unidentified energy signatures detected in residential section C. Security teams converging. All residents remain in quarters for immediate inspection." Doctor Carter looked from the alien to her daughter, professional duty battling with newly awakened understanding. In that moment, she faced an imposed doctor. The choice: follow protocol or protect a sentient being. The alarms grew louder as Nalan held her breath, watching her mother's expression transform from confusion to resolution. "Doctor." Carter's fingers flew across the security terminal, her medical override code silencing the shrieking alarm. The sudden quiet felt almost as jarring as the noise had been. She exhaled sharply, glancing at the display. "We have 4 minutes before the system automatically notify doctor. Security of a medical override. Maybe less if someone's actively monitoring." Nalan clutched Celeste closer, the hatchling's skin pulsing with anxious blues and purples against DRR chest. Dr. Carter approached them, her professional demeanor firmly in place as she extended her hands. "May I?" Nalan hesitated, then carefully transferred Celeste to her mother's waiting hands. "Doctor." Carter's clinical gaze swept over the alien, doctor fingers probing with practiced precision along the delicate wing membranes and iridescent exoskeleton. Her movements were methodical, detached, until Celeste's antennae suddenly extended, touching her wry doctor. Dr. Carter gasped, her eyes widening as her clinical mask shattered. Wonder bloomed across her features, the transformation so complete that Nalan barely recognized her mother in that moment. Doctor." "Communicating," Dr. Carter whispered. "I can feel curiosity and trust because of you." She looked at Nalan with new eyes. "This telepathic capability is extraordinary." The security terminal beeped a 1-minute warning. "Doctor." Carter's expression hardened with sudden commitment. "I'm a doctor first, colony employee second," Doctor declared, returning Celeste to Nalan's arms. "And I will not stand by while sentient beings are treated as specimens. We're getting both HDRGS out of here tonight." Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside their habitat unit. "Doctor." Carter pressed a finger to her lips, then strode to the door as it slid open, revealing 2 security officers with hands hovering near their sidearms. "Dr. Carter, we registered a security alert from your quarters." She sighed with practiced exasperation. "My fault entirely. I was calibrating a new portable scanner, and it interfered with the Habitat-S doctorors." She gestured to a medical device deliberately left open on her workstation. "These new models from Central Command are notoriously finicky." The lead officer frowned. "Protocol requires a full sweep of, which would be a waste of your time and mine," Dr. Carter interrupted, her voice carrying the weight of her authority. "I have an emergency procedure in 30 minutes. The biolab reported equipment failure affecting critical samples." She was already gathering items into a medical transport container, the same container now concealing Celeste beneath a false bottom Nalan had watched her mother hastily construct. The officers exchanged glances, then reluctantly stepped back. "File the proper documentation this time, Doctor." "Of course," she replied smoothly, hoisting the container. "Nalan, bring my supplementary kit. This might take all night, Doctor." Nalan grabbed the smaller case, heart hammering against her ribs as they walked past the security officers. Celeste's presence burned in her a doctor, Ennis, a humming tension she was certain everyone could detect. Yet they passed through the habitat section unchallenged, Doctor Carter's medical authority clearing their path like an invisible shield. The laboratory section hummed with the quiet efficiency of advanced equipment. Dr. Carter secured the door behind them, engaging privacy protocols before carefully extracting Celeste from the hidden compartment. "Let's see exactly what we're dealing with." She placed Celeste on a scanning platform, the equipment humming to life. Three-dimensional ray doctor rings materialized above them, crystalline cellular structures unlike anything in the colony's biological database. Celeste's internal anatomy appeared as an intricate lattice of mineral organic composite tissues, pulsing with energy that the scanners struggled to classify. "Remarkable, Doctor," Carter murmured, manipulating the display. "These crystalline structures explain the energy emissions that triggered our sensors. They're both biological and mineral, capable of absorbing, storing, and transmitting Doctor, in ways our science has barely theorized." She switched to another screen, her expression darkening. "The system detects a similar energy signature elsewhere in the colony. Much weaker, but with the same fundamental pattern." "The other egg," Nalan whispered. "They captured it after the impact." Dr. Carter nodded grimly. "And it contains a living hatchling, but these readings..." She pointed to fluctuating values on the doctor display. "Its life signs are deteriorating rapidly. Whatever they're doing to study it is killing it." Her fingers danced across the terminal, bypassing security protocols with her medical clearance. Research files appeared labeled classified, director authorization only. "They're calling it Specimen A1, Dr. Carter read, her voice tight with controlled fury. "Director Harlow has authorized invasive Dr. Oster's scheduled for 700 tomorrow. They're planning to extract the energy-producing organs for study while the specimen is still alive." The clinical language couldn't disguise the horror of what was planned. Nalan felt sick, her hand instinctively finding Celeste, who had begun to tremble. "That's not research," Dr. Carter said flatly. "It's vivisection, and we have exactly 18 hours to prevent it." Celeste suddenly arched on the examination table, its skin flashing with painful intensity. Nalan cried out, reaching for the hatchling as images flooded her mind, fragmentary, alien perspectives that made her dizzy with their strangeness. Vast darkness, stars, movement through void, planetfall, crystalline eggs nestled in mineral-rich soil, growth, doctoring, return. "It's the other hatchling," Nalan gasped, struggling to interpret the chaotic impressions. "They're connected somehow, I can see. I think these eggs aren't abandoned. They're planted like seeds. The adult Arcturians send eggs to worlds with specific minerals they need to develop, then come back for them later." "Doctor." Carter watched in fascination as Celeste's skin displayed complex patterns of light corresponding to Nalan's words. "The telepathic connection is strengthening," she observed. "And if you're right, those meteor impacts the colony's been recording aren't random at all. They're part of a reproductive cycle we've interrupted." Nalan moved to her mother's terminal, pulling up the colony's geological survey data. Her fingers moved with certainty born from countless hours watching her father map the planet's surface. "Look, 6 previous impact sites, all with the same mineral composite Dr. N, and they correspond exactly with the meteor anomalies recorded over the past 3 standard years." She manipulated the display, revealing a time lapse of orbital scans. and hear Dr. S. energy signatures approaching our orbit at regular intervals. They're not random space debris. They're the adults coming to collect their young. Dr. Carter stared at the projection. If these calculations are correct, they'll arrive within days. The laboratory door slid open without warning. Nalan frantically threw a cover over Celeste as Dr. Yasmin Kapoor stepped IDRDE, her dark eyes immediate doctor, why narrowing at their obvious panic. Ilara doctor, he power consumption in this lab Jew doctor, spiked to levels that make no sense for standard equipment. Her gaze shifted to the hastily covered examination table, then to the classified files still displayed on the terminal. What exactly are you doing? The silence stretched painfully as Dr. Carter positioned herself between Dr. Kapoor and Celeste. Nalan felt her hopes crumbling. Dr. Kapoor was Director Harlow's research lead. Dr. Kapoor sighed, then deliberately reached into her pocket. Instead of calling security, she placed a data chip on the counter. I've been doctor, documenting Harlow's ethical violations for months, she said quietly. Human subjects experimentation, FALS doctor, ed environmental impact reports, suppression doctor indigenous life form data. I was hoping to build a case strong enough that Central Command couldn't ignore it. She glanced at the covered form on the table. But it seems you found something that can't wait for bureaucratic justice. Dr. Carter's shoulders sagged. Doctor, relief. Yasmin. We need your help. Together they outlined a rescue plan, utilizing Dr. Kapoor's intimate knowledge of security protocols and Dr. Carter's medical authority. The maintenance tunnels constructed during the colony's establishment, and largely forgotten, would provide access to the high-security laboratory where the captured hatchling was held. I'll create a diversion by reporting contamination in Lab C, Dr. Carter explained, sketching the route on a tablet. Yasmin will disable the security systems for exactly 3 minutes. Any longer would trigger automated protocols we can't override. And I'll go through the ventilation ducts, Nalan finished. I'm the only one small enough to fit, and Celeste can guide me telepathically to its sibling. The colony-wide announcement system crackled to life, interrupting their planning. Director Harlow's voice filled the room, pitched with uncharacteristic excitement. Attention, all outpost Epsilon personnel. Our research team has discovered valuable biological compounds that will ensure our colony's economic future. These compounds, derived from the recent meteorite specimen, demonstrate unprecedented energy doctor aeration capabilities. Effective immediately, all research sections are operating under Enhanced Security Prot Doctor, LS. Restricted access is in effect. This discovery changes everything, people. Epsilon will no longer be just Anno Doctor. Our mining outpost will be the energy production center. Doctor the entire sector. The three exchanged grim looks as the announcement ended. He's already planning how to weaponize and profit from the hatchlings, Dr. Kapoor said flatly. There will be no appealing to authorities now. Too much money at stake. Then we move tonight, Dr. Carter declared. Third shift, minimal personnel. The plan unfolded with precision during the colony's artificial night. Dr. Carter's contamination alert emptied the adjacent laboratories. Dr. Kapoor's security override created their 3-minute window. Nalan, with Celeste secured in a modified backpack, squeezed through maintenance ducts that smelled of metal and dust, guided by her father's old maintenance maps and Celeste's increasingly urgent telepathic pulses. The high-security laboratory loomed sterile and cold as Nalan dropped silently from the ventilation shaft. The captured hatchling lay encased in a stasis field, its once vibrant skin dulled to a sickly gray. Multiple invasive probes penetrated its delicate exoskeleton, connected to machines recording data in incomprehensible streams. I don't know how to shut this down, Nalan whispered, panic rising as she examined the unfamiliar equipment. Celeste squirmed from the backpack, its antennae extending toward the control panel. Where they touched the surface, patterns of light raced across the interface. The stasis field fluctuated, then collapsed, but Celeste's luminescence dimmed alarmingly, its life energy visibly draining into the colony's systems. Overhead lights flickered as power fluctuated throughout the section. A secondary alarm began to pulse, its red glow washing over them in rhythmic waves. "Celeste, stop," Nolan pleaded, pulling the hatchling back. "You're who, Doctor, NG yourself." The damage was already done. The stasis field had collapsed, but Celeste lay limp in her arms, its glow reduced to a faint flicker. The second hatchling looked even worse, wing membranes completely atrophied, crystalline skin structures fractured from improper handling and invasive procedures. "You need specialized treatment," Nolan whispered to both hatchlings. "And we have maybe 2 minutes before security responds to these power fluctuations." "As if on cue, Doctor." Carter's voice echoed through the emergency system. "Attention all personnel. Radiation leak detected in Research Wing B. Emergency evacuation protocols in effect. This is not a drill." Chaos erupted in the corridor's perfect cover for escape, but also separating Nolan from her adult allies. With both hatchlings secured against her chest, she slipped into the maintenance passages, choosing routes her father had shown her during colony construction, his voice guiding her from memory. "Always good to know the back ways, Nal Bear. Official maps never show the shortcuts that actually make things work." The abandoned early survey outpost stood silhouetted against the planet's larger moon as Nolan finally emerged from the maintenance tunnels. Her arms ached from carrying both hatchlings, but the isolation of the outpost offered temporary safety. Emergency medical supplies still stocked the shelves, basic, but better than nothing. Celeste stirred, weakly extending an antenna to touch the injured sibling. Their bioluminescence synchronized, creating matching patterns that pulsed with increasing strength. Through their connection, knowledge flowed into Nolan's mind: specific mineral requirements, energy frequencies, healing processes utterly alien yet suddenly comprehensible. Working with desperate focus, she improvised treatments using the limited supplies. Mineral solutions dripped into delicate feeding spiracles. Energy cells, rewired to produce specific frequencies, stimulated damaged tissues. Hours blurred as she worked, guided by Celeste's transferred knowledge. By dawn, the second hatchling had stabilized, though its condition remained critical. Through their deepening telepathic bond, Nolan received more complex information about Arcturian reproduction, the genetic programming that embedded navigational coordinates within each hatchling, directing them home once met. "Doctor. That's why the lab specimens failed," she realized aloud. "They weren't just collecting random mineral samples, the exact composition at the impact sites is crucial." Her father's old survey equipment still functioned. Triangulating from known core Dr. 8's, she identified the nearest original impact site just beyond the colony's security perimeter in terrain designated unstable due to seismic activity. Dangerous but potentially accessible. The communication unit crackled to life. Dr. Carter had FDRD a secure frequency. "Nolan, thank God. Are you safe? Do you have both hatchlings? We're at Dad's old survey post. The second one is alive but critical. They need minerals from the original impact site to fully recover." "Listen carefully." Dr. Carter's voice was tense. "Harlow has ordered a comprehensive security sweep after discovering the specimen theft. They're using advanced thermal and energy detection equipment. They'll find your location within hours unless you can move beyond scanner range." Dr. Kapoor's voice cut in. "I've delayed them by corrupting some scanner calibrations, but it won't hold for long." Nolan began gathering supplies, calculating the fastest route to the impact site. The CODRY alert system suddenly blared to life, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Attention all personnel. Multiple unidentified objects DETCTDON intercept trajectory. Energy SIGN8URES match previous specimen READINGS. All defensive SYSTEMS ACTIVATED. This is not a drill. Director Harlow's voice followed. All security personnel to defensive positions. These objects appear to be the source of our valuable specimens. We will secure these assets for the colony's future. Nolan's tablet blinked with incoming data from Dr. Kapoor, the colony's defensive systems activating, including orbital weapon platforms, original Doctor design to protect mining interests from corporate competitors. The targeting systems were locking onto the approaching Arcturian vessels. Celeste's skin flashed with urgent patterns, projecting images into Nolan's mind. The approaching vessels contained not invaders but parents, following biological imperative to retrieve their young. The telepathic impressions carried absolute certainty. Weapons fire would trigger defensive measures resulting in destruction of the entire colony. The communication system crackled again. Dr. Alara Carter, report to security immediately. You are under suspicion of involvement in specimen theft. Failure to comply will result in immediate detention. Nolan stared at the tablet display, watching in horror as the automated defense system began its targeting sequence for the approaching Arcturian vessels. The countdown timer showed less than 2 hours before weapons achieved firing solution. She faced an impossible choice: evade security forces closing in on her position, help the injured hatchling reach the mineral-rich impact site for healing, or somehow prevent an interspecies war that would result in the colony's destruction. And she had less than 2 hours to do it all. Celeste stirred against her chest, its weakened glow pulsing with drive. The second hatchling's antennae twined with its siblings, their light synchronizing into a pattern Nolan hadn't seen before. "You're right," she whispered, a plan forming in her mind. "We don't have to choose. We need to show them what I've learned, that you're not resources to be harvested or threats to be destroyed. You're children who just want to go home." She gathered both hatchlings, securing them in a makeshift carrier against her chest, and stepped out into the alien dawn. The impact site lay 3 kilometers across unstable terrain. Security forces were closing in from the colony, and above them, Arcturian vessels approached while weapons locked on. 2 hours to prevent a war, save the hatchlings, and somehow make adults understand what seemed so obvious to her. Some things transcended species, planets, and even the stars themselves, like the bond between parent and child, and the lengths one would go to protect it. Nolan's fingers trembled as she connected the final wire in her father's old survey equipment. The makeshift signal jammer sparked once, then hummed to life with a low, unsteady whine. The display flickered green, showing a circular dead zone expanding outward from their position in the abandoned outpost. "It's working," she whispered, glancing at the countdown timer she'd set. "But we've only got 17 minutes before the system overheats." Through their strengthening telepathic bond, she felt Celeste's anxiety pulse like a second heartbeat. The healthy hatchling huddled protectively over its injured sibling, their crystalline structures glowing unevenly in the dim light. The wounded one's light pulsed weakly, its damaged wing membranes nearly transparent. Nolan studied her tablet, 3 separate crisis indicators flashing red. Security drones were already sweeping the eastern quadrant, methodically working toward their position. The injured hatchlings' vital signs continued their steady decline. And most alarming of all, the colony's automated defense system had begun target acquisition on the approaching Arcturian vessels that Celeste's emotional projections insisted were not hostile. "We can't solve all 3 at once," Nolan said, her mind racing. "We need to split up." Celeste's luminescence brightened in alarm, projecting a wave of resistance so strong it made Nolan wince. "I know, I don't want to separate either," she said, kneeling beside the hatchlings. "But we don't have a choice." As if understanding the gravity of their situation, Celeste's crystalline structures suddenly pulsed with intense blue light. The hatchling extended one delicate limb toward Nolan's forehead. She hesitated only briefly before leaning forward, allowing contact. The telepathic connection exploded from a gentle current into a roaring flood. Nolan gasped, her body going rigid as alien knowledge crashed through her consciousness. Her vision fractured into kaleidoscopic fragments, translucent gestation chambers floating in star-flecked darkness, crystalline structures absorbing minerals from pulverized asteroid matter, adult Arcturians with vast wing membranes sailing through radiation fields that would kill a human instantly. Blood trickled from her nose as the information overload threatened to overwhelm her. She saw the injured hatchling's internal structure with impossible clarity. T-Doctor fractured crystalline lattice that formed its core, the specific radiation frequency it needed to catalyze healing. When C-Doctor T finally broke contact, Nolan collapsed onto her hands and knees, gasping. "The impact site," she panted, wiping blood from her upper lip. "The minerals it needs are there," but her eyes widened with sudden understanding. "The same isotope signature is in the colony's power core shielding. We don't need to reach the impact site. We need to get to the core." Her tablet chimed with DRN incoming transmission. "Doctor." Carter's face appeared, the medical bay's emergency lights casting harsh shadows across her features. "We've bought you some time," Dr. Carter said, her voice tight with tension. "Kapoor and I reported radiation contamination in central systems. Harlow's communications are disrupted, but it won't last long." She glanced over her shoulder. "We're separating now. Kapoor's heading to weapons control to attempt a system override. I'll create a diversion to draw security away from your position." "Mom, wait," Nolan started, but Dr. Carter cut her off. "There's no time, Nolan. Whatever you're planning, do it now." Her expression softened momentarily. "Your father would be proud." The transmission ended abruptly. Nolan swallowed hard, fighting back tears. She turned to Celeste, whose glow had dimmed noticeably after the intense telepathic transfer. "Can you carry your sibling a little longer?" The colony's emergency sirens began to wail, their piercing tone reverberating through the abandoned outpost. Red emergency lights activated throughout the colony, visible through the dirty windows. Nolan's tablet displayed the automated response protocols, all transport systems redirecting to evacuation routes. "That's it," she whispered, a plan crystallizing. "The medical transport." Minutes later, Nolan lay flat on her stomach beneath an automated medical transport vehicle as it glided along its programmed evacuation route. The confined space would have been impossible for an adult to navigate, but her small frame fit with centimeters to spare. Above her, secured to the underside of the transport with strips torn from her jacket, both hatchlings remained perfectly still, their bioluminescence dimmed to near invisibility. The transport paused at a security checkpoint. Nolan held her breath as boots appeared in her limited field of vision. "Evacuation Protocol 7 Alpha in effect," a mechanized voice announced from the transport. "Medical supplies in transit to Shelter 4. "Proceed," came the response after an agonizing pause. As they continued forward, Nolan's tablet vibrated against her chest. A thermal scan sweep was progressing through the residential sector, but another security team had detected something near the power core. They were redirecting to investigate. "They're looking for my mom," Nolan realized with a sinking feeling. The transport was approaching a junction that would take them toward the residential shelters away from the power core. She made her decision in an instant. As the transport slowed for the turn, Nolan detached the makeshift harness holding the hatchlings and rolled out from underneath, pulling them with her into a maintenance alcove. The transport continued on its programmed path, unaware it had lost its stowaways. "This way," she whispered, prying open a maintenance hatch that led to the colony's understructure. The narrow passage beyond was barely half a meter in diameter, festooned with cables and hot pipes. Warning labels indicated restricted access and potential hazards. Nolan squeezed inside, cradling the doctor, clings against her chest. The injured hatchling's glow had faded to an alarming dull gray. Worse, Celeste's luminescence was also dimming as it continued to share life energy with its sibling. The telepathic connection that had been so vivid minutes before now felt distant and fragmented. "Stay with me," Nalan urged as she navigated the claustrophobic tunnel. Her father's old radiation badge, clipped to her collar, had begun to show yellow at its edges, a warning that they were approaching unsafe levels. The power core lay just ahead. Her tablet vibrated again. "Doctor." Kapoor had reached weapons control, but her message contained no good news. Biometric lockdown in effect. Harlow's authorization required for any targeting adjustments. Cannot disable weapons. Accessing specifications now. Nalan's heart sank. Seconds later, another message appeared with a technical schematic and a single critical detail highlighted. After target acquisition, the colony's defense system required a 3-minute recalibration and charging sequence before firing. 3 minutes. That was their window. The maintenance tunnel ended at a sealed access panel. Beyond it lay the power core's outer maintenance ring. Nalan's radiation badge had turned fully yellow now, the warning unmistakable. She hesitated, studying the panel. It was secured with biometric locks impossible to bypass. But as she ran her fingers along the seam, she noticed something. A slight gap where the panel met Dr. All, just as her father had pointed out years ago during construction. "They never sealed the conduit properly," he had told her during one of his inspection rounds. "Save the company credits, but it's a radiation leak waiting to happen." The gap was too small for an adult, but perhaps just large enough for her. Nalan calculated quickly. The radiation levels would be dangerous, potentially lethal with prolonged exposure. But her smaller body mass might withstand a brief exposure better than an adult's would. It was their only chance. Meanwhile, in the medical bay, Dr. Carter worked with controlled urgency, her fingers flying across the control panel. Security officers pounded on the sealed doors as she completed the FDRL command sequence. "Emergency quarantine protocol initiated," the system announced. "Biohazard containment in Dr. Ect." On her monitor, she watched as the command center sealed itself, trapping Director Harlow and his security team inside. It wouldn't hold them for long, but Doctor, buy enough time. The moment the quarantine activated, her medical credentials vanished from the display, replaced by flashing red text. "Access REVOKED. Security alert, unauthorized system manipulation. Detain immediately." 20 years of service, her entire professional identity, gone in an instant. Dr. Carter allowed herself one deep breath before turning to face the security officers who had finally breached the door. "Dr. Elara Carter," the lead officer announced formally, "you are detained for sabotage and interference with colony security protocols." As they secured her hands behind her back, Dr. Carter caught sight of her reflection in the darkened monitor. She looked different somehow, not the respected chief medical officer, but something else. Someone her daughter might actually be proud of. Back at the power core, Nalan had removed the outer layer of her clothing to wrap around the hatchlings for additional radiation protection. The gap in the conduit seal was barely wide enough for her shoulders. Sharp metal edges tore at her skin as she forced her way through, gritting her teeth against the pain. Her father's radiation badge turned red the moment she emerged into the maintenance chamber. A harsh electronic tone from her tablet warned her she had less than 10 minutes before receiving a dangerous radiation dose. The power core itself was beautiful in a terrifying way, a pulsing blue-white cylinder, surrounded by concentric rings of shielding material. The injured hatchling responded immediately to the proximity, its dull gray luminescence taking on a subtle blue tinge. Celeste too seemed stronger here, the telepathic connection clarifying. Nalan moved quickly to the innermost shielding ring, where her father's scanner indicated the highest concentration of the isotope the hatchling needed. Using maintenance tools from a nearby emergency kit, she carefully pried loose a small fragment of the specialized shielding material. The moment she removed it, alarms blared throughout the chamber. Red warning lights flashed as the automated system detected the breach in radiation containment. On her tablet, security response teams appeared to be converging on her location from multiple directions. Simultaneously, a second alert appeared: the defense system had completed target acquisition of the approaching Arcturian vessels. The 3-minute countdown to weapon firing had begun. 2 timers now dominated her display. 9:42 until dangerous radiation exposure. 2:51 until weapons fire. Both counting down relentlessly. Nolan returned to the hatchlings, carefully placing the radioactive fragment against the injured one's damaged crystalline structure. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The material seemed to melt into the hatchling's body, creating pulsing patterns of energy that spread through its lattice like skeleton. The energy fluctuations intensified, creating interference patterns that made her tablet screen flicker and distort. Throughout the colony, systems began to report anomalies. The power core's safety protocols detected the energy pattern as similar to a potential breach, automatically initiati doctor, a shutdown sequence. A new alert appeared on her tablet: power core shutdown initiated. Life support systems transferring to emergency backup. Estimated backup duration, 72 hours. Nolan froze in horror. The shutdown would disable the defense systems, preventing weapons fire on the Urian vessels, but it would also leave the entire colony on limited life support. Thousands of lives put doctor, ally at risk. She had seconds to decide. Abort the hatchling's treatment to stop the shutdown, allow the shutdown to continue but risk the colony, or find some impossible third option. In the secondary medical server room, Dr. Kapoor DDRED behind a storage unit as security personnel swept through with weapons drawn. They passed within centimeters of her hiding place before Kant Dr. Ing down the corridor. Only when their footsteps faded did she emerge, heart pounding. Her doctorlet vibrated with an incoming transmission. Dr. Carter's face appeared, now clearly in custody, security personnel visible behind her. Quantum authentication, Dr. Carter said without preamble. The weapons targeting system uses the same protocols as the medical systems. My biometric data is still active in the backup medical servers. You could create a temporary override. They've revoked your access, Dr. Kapoor replied. To active systems, yes, but the backup store historical authentication data. It's how we maintain continuity during system failures. Dr. Carter glanced nervously over her shoulder. You need to hurry. The transmission cut off abruptly. Dr. Kapoor turned toward the server access panel, a new plan forming. At the power core, the injured hatchling's metamorphic healing process had intensified. Pulses of energy radiated outward, temporarily disabling Nolan's communications and the security cameras. She shielded her eyes against the brilliant flashes of light. When the pulses subsided, the hatchling had transformed. Its damaged structures had partially regenerated, not enough for flight but sufficient for limited movement. More significantly, its telepathic presence had strengthened dramatically, forming a 3-way connection that felt like a completed circuit between itself, Celeste, and Nolan. Through this enhanced connection, Nolan suddenly experienced vivid visions of the approaching Arcturian vessels. They weren't warships at all, but living entities, massive versions of the hatchlings, their crystalline structures fully developed into magnificent, cathedral-like forms that sailed through space on vast, translucent wings. She felt their confusion and concern as they detected both their offspring and threatening weapon systems. They were attempting communication, broadcasting complex crystalline resonance patterns that human technology couldn't interpret or even detect. They're not attacking, Nolan whispered. They're trying to talk to us. The colony-wide announcement system crackled to life. Director Harlow's voice echoed through every chamber and corridor. "Attention all colonists. This is Director Harlow. We are under alien invasion. Final defense protocols are now in effect. All personnel report to emergency shelters immediately." His voice dropped slightly, as if addressing someone off microphone, but Dr. SDREM still transmitted his words. "Once we eliminate the approaching hostiles, secure those specimens. Exotech Corporation has already committed to exclusive development rights. The biological properties alone are worth billions in pharmaceutical applications." Nolan's blood ran cold. This wasn't about colony protection, it was about eliminating witnesses to an unprecedented resource grab. The hatchlings weren't refugees to be helped, they were assets to be Dr. A plan formed in Dr. Land's mind, desperate, requiring perfect timing and cooperation between species. They needed to doctor the hatchlings' crystalline resonance to communicate with the adult Arcturians, while Dr. Carter and Dr. Kapoor attempted to override the weapons systems. "We need to reach the communication array," she told the hatchlings through Doctor, their telepathic link, receiving pulses of understanding in return. The radiation timer on her tablet showed 5:13 remaining before dangerous Dr. Osier. The weapons countdown showed 1:42 until firing. Security forces were converging from multiple directions. There was no time for caution or second thoughts. In the secondary medical server room, Dr. Kapoor received an alert that Dr. Carter had been captured. Security forces were already approaching her position. With no other options, Dr. Carter had made a critical decision, surrendering herself as a distraction. As security escorted Dr. Carter past a junction, she stumbled deliberately, colliding with a guard. In the momentary confusion, she pressed her medical access chip against Dr. Kapoor's tablet, which she'd hidden in an equipment alcove earlier. The contact was brief, but sufficient to transfer her authentication credentials. Dr. Kapoor retrieved the tablet minutes later, finding the credentials transfer complete, but the override process estimating a 3-minute completion time. They might not have 3 minutes. Nolan and the hatchlings reached the communication array control room through a final, punishing crawl through maintenance ducts. Her radiation badge now showed dangerous exposure levels, and her skin had taken on a concerning flush. DRHE room was temporarily unmanned, all personnel having responded to the emergency protocols. With shaking hands, she connected Celeste to the primary transmission system using cables repurposed from monitoring equipment. The interface was crude, a biological crystalline resonance translator, patched into electromagnetic communication technology, never designed for such a purpose. "Please work," she whispered as she initiated the transmission. The makeshift system began broadcasting what she hoped was the equivalent of "Don't fire offspring safe miscommunication" to the approaching Arcturians. The hatchling's crystalline structures vibrated visibly with the effort of translation. On her tablet, multiple crisis points converged. 0:42 until weapons fire. Dr. Kapoor's override at 68% completion, not fast enough. Security forces converging on the communication array room power core shut down at 74% completion, and most alarming, a new alert. Director Harlow had initiated a manual weapons override to fire immediately. In this moment of seeming failure, the recovered hatchling suddenly rose up, its partially healed structures glowing with accumulated energy. Before Nolan could react, it released a precisely targeted electromagnetic pulse that surged through the colony's systems. The pulse disabled the weapons systems without affecting life support, creating a temporary blackout throughout the colony. When emergency lighting activated seconds later, Nolan's tablet showed all weapons systems offline. Through the viewport, she could see the Arcturian vessels entering orbit, their crystalline structures catching the light of the system's star in breathtaking patterns. The colony defenses remained silent. The crisis had been averted temporarily. But as security forces burst into the communication array room, weapons drawn, Nolan realized they now faced a new challenge. Convincing two species, each with reason to distrust the other, to attempt communication rather than conflict. The recovered hatchling placed one delicate limb against her temple, sharing a single clear thought. Together. Nolan nodded, stepping forward to face the security team with the hatchlings at her side. "We need to talk to Director Harlow," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "About first contact protocols." The electromagnetic pulse faded like a receding tide, leaving darkness in its wake. Emergency lighting sputtered to life, casting the communication array room in alternating shadows and harsh red glows. Nolan held her breath in the sudden silence. The hatchlings pressed against her sides as they collectively watched the Arcturian vessels glide into standard orbit through the viewport. The alien ships maintained distance, neither advancing nor retreating, their crystalline structures refracting the distant sun into prismatic patterns across the colony's outer hull. Colony-wide alerts crackled through backup speakers. All systems compromised. Weapons offline. Emergency protocols engaged. Director Harlow's voice cut through the automated warnings, tight with barely controlled panic. "Restore targeting systems immediately. Route all available power to defense grid." Nolan glanced down at the injured hatchling, its luminescence pulsing with newfound strength despite its weakened state. The pulse had been its doing, a desperate, instinctive defense mechanism she hadn't known it possessed. "You bought us time," she whispered, stroking its crystalline appendage. "But only minutes, not hours." Through the viewport, smaller structures detached from the Arcturian vessel's delicate crystalline formations that caught the light as they descended toward the colony. Nolan felt a flutter of hope, but the colony's response was immediate and predictable. Unknown objects deploying from hostile vessels, all security teams to defensive positions. The commander's voice echoed through emergency channels despite the weapon's failure. Nolan watched as colony security forces scrambled across the outer platforms, positioning themselves with handheld weapons and portable shields. They couldn't see what she could, that these weren't weapons but communication probes, complex crystalline structures designed to establish contact. The hatchlings began to vibrate against her skin, their crystalline bodies resonating with the approaching probes. The sensation traveled up Nolan's arms, tingling along her neural pathways. The telepathic link deepened, sharpened, and suddenly she wasn't just receiving impressions but complex information streams. The adult Arcturians were concerned, no, alarmed. Nolan caught fractured images, weapons signatures detected from the colony's transmission history, biological samples catalogued, extraction protocols. The Arcturians weren't preparing for war. They were attempting rescue while fearing a trap. They had encountered humans before, and those encounters had ended poorly. Across the colony, Director Harlow sealed himself in the reinforced command center, his fingers flying across control panels as he implemented emergency authorization protocols. Screens around him displayed Doctor, USTMs locking down one by one, access rights transferring exclusively to his credentials. "Extraction team confirmed status," he whispered into a secure channel not routed through colony communications. "Standing by in the belt," came the response, the voice cold and professional. "Awaiting your signal. Prepare for immediate deployment. Primary objective has shifted: secure the biological specimens at all costs. Eliminate witnesses." Harlow's eyes flicked to a laboratory display showing the crystalline structure of Arcturian biology, molecular patterns highlighted that could revolutionize quantum computing, weapons technology, even dimensional manipulation. Too valuable to leave behind, too dangerous to let others discover. In the security detention block, Dr. Carter sat with her back against the cold wall, observing the guards through lowered eyelids. Something was wrong with their deployment. The security chief was dividing his forces, some receiving special comm units with encrypted frequencies, others being positioned at colony choke points without explanation. She caught fragments of conversation: extraction coordinates, priority clearance, civilian containment. When the guard changed, she made her move. "Officer," she called, her voice clinical and authoritative despite her detention status. "I need to report a potential biohazard situation. My contact with the alien material may have contaminated me." The young guard's eyes widened. "What kind of contamination?" "Potentially airborne, pathogenic. Standard isolation protocols must be implemented immediately." She held his gaze, projecting professional concern rather than desperation. "Check your emergency medical directives." Section 5C. Minutes later, she found herself in a medical isolation chamber with limited terminal access for patient monitoring. Exactly as she'd planned. Nalin gasped as the telepathic connection with the adult Arcturians intensified. No longer just information but emotional context flooding through her consciousness. Images cascaded behind her eyes. Vast migrations across star systems, crystalline eggs deposited on carefully selected worlds, returned centuries later to collect matured offspring. She saw the Arcturians' confusion upon finding human structures on their ancient hatching ground, their dismay at detecting their children's distress signals. The valuable mineral deposits that had attracted Earth's corporate interests weren't random geological formations, but the remnants of previous Arcturian hatching cycles, the crystalline structures left behind as biological markers for returning parents. "It's all a misunderstanding," Nalin whispered, the revelation staggering. "They're not invading. They're just parents looking for Doctor, children." A violent shudder ran through the colony, followed by warning klaxons. "Life support failure in residential section 3, announced the automated system. "All residents proceed to emergency shelters." Nalin frowned. The EMP shouldn't have affected life support. Those systems had independent shielding and backup power. Through the viewport, she could see civilians streaming from their quarters, clutching personal belongings, children crying as atmosphere pressure warnings flashed. Another section failed, then another. A pattern was emerging: residential sections first, forcing civilians toward specific emergency shelters that could be selectively sealed. This wasn't random damage. This was hurting. Her communication console beeped with an incoming transmission: Dr. Kapoor's ID code. "Nalin," the scientist's voice came through, breathless and low. "I've managed partial override using your mother's credentials. I can stabilize life support in critical sectors, but there's something else." The transmission crackled with interference. "Harlow has activated the colony's self-destruct sequence on a 4-hour timer. He's planning to destroy everything if he can't secure what he wants." Nalin's blood ran cold. "Can you deactivate it?" "Not remotely. The sequence requires physical override in the command center." A pause. "Nalin, whatever corporate interest is backing him, they're willing to sacrifice the entire colony to hide what they're doing." Through the viewport, Nalin noticed the Arcturian vessel's shifting position, forming a precise geometric pattern around the colony. The hatchlings' vibrations intensified, and through their connection, she understood what was happening. The adult Arcturians were preparing a large-scale resonance field to stabilize their offspring and potentially extract them safely. But the energy pattern— Nalin's eyes widened as the implications became clear through the hatchlings' shared knowledge. The resonance field would catastrophically interact with the colony's power core, triggering the very destruction Harlow had planned, but hours sooner. "They don't know," she whispered. "They're trying to help, but they'll destroy us all." She faced an impossible challenge: how to convince the Arcturians their rescue attempt would destroy the colony, while simultaneously alerting the colonists that their own director was planning their demise. Neither side would believe her alone, and there wasn't time to convince them separately. Nalin took a deep breath and made her decision. She positioned both hatchlings directly against the communication array's primary interface, then placed her hands atop them, completing the circuit with her own body. The pain was immediate, and overwhelming neural feedback scorching through her nervous system, as the telepathic connection amplified beyond human tolerance. She bit back a scream, tasting blood where she'd bitten her tongue. Through watering eyes, she focused on a single task, transmitting precise technical specifications of the colony's power systems to the adult Arcturians, showing them how to modify their resonance field to prevent catastrophic interference. Images flowed from her mind: schematics, energy signatures, resonance patterns. The hatchling's crystalline structures heated beneath her palms, but she couldn't let go, even as her vision blurred and darkness crept at its edges. In the asteroid belt, a sleek vessel with minimal running lights detached from its hiding place among the rocks. Its hull bore no identification markings, its design optimized for speed and stealth rather than standard commercial or military configurations. "Extraction team deploying," reported the captain to Director Harlow. "ETA 22 minutes. Prepare specimens for immediate transfer." The vessel's approach triggered automated proximity warnings despite the weapons systems being offline. Throughout the colony, display screens showed the unidentified craft's trajectory, adding a new layer of confusion and fear to the already chaotic situation. The injured hatchling shuddered beneath Nalin's hand, its crystalline structures fully regenerating with surprising speed. The communication array's energy field seemed to accelerate its healing, power flowing through the alien biology in DRYS she couldn't understand but could feel through their connection. A new stream of information flowed into her consciousness, images of specialized containment units designed specifically for Arcturian physiology, laboratories where crystalline samples were extracted and processed, failed attempts to replicate their unique properties. Earth corporations had encountered Arcturians before, had captured and studied them in secret, had known exactly what they were looking for when they established this colony. The revelation explained Dr. Everything the adult Arcturians' caution, Director Harloder, Aspiration, the corporate extraction team's specialized equipment. This wasn't first Doctor, intact. It was the continuation of an exploitation the public never knew about. In the detention block, Dr. Carter slipped through Dr. Ventilation access panel she'd carefully loosened, her slender frame barely fitting through the narrow opening. Medical staff were trained Dr. Emergency evacuations through maintenance systems, knowledge that security apparently hadn't considered when detaining her. She navigated by memory and intuition, each junction bringing her closer to the central maintenance hub where she might access broader systems. As she rounded a tight corner, she nearly collided with another figure crawling through the same system. "Dr. Kapoor," she gasped. The scientist's eyes widened in recognition. "Dr. Carter, how did you emergency medical protocols? You, maintenance access from the lab." Dr. Kapoor's expression was grim. "I've discovered something terrible. Harlow has divided the security forces and prepared for extraction," Dr. Carter finished. "I saw it in detention. Worse, he's activated the self-destruct sequence." They shared a moment of horrified understanding before Dr. Carter spoke again. "Technical solutions won't be enough. We need Nalin. The Arcturians trust her through the hatchlings. She's our only hope of resolving this without destruction." A violent power fluctuation rocked the colony, lights flickering as energy redirected to emergency weapon capacitors. In the communication array room, the interface beneath Nalin's hands went dark, severing the telepathic amplification she'd established. She collapsed backward, gasping, as security alerts blared through the corridor outside. "They're in Section 7, near the communication array. All units converge." Nolan grabbed both hatchlings, cradling them against her chest as she scrambled toward the maintenance access panel in the room's corner. The panel designed for adult maintenance workers came loose with a sharp tug, revealing a dark tunnel barely wide enough for her small frame. "This way," she whispered to the hatchlings, who pulsed with "Understand, Doctor." Doctor. They crawled deeper into the maintenance system. The fully recovered hatchling extended a "Cries Doctor" line appendage toward junction boxes they passed. Each contact created momentary disruptions in the colony's system's security cameras freezing, communication channels filling with static, tracker signals showing false positions. "You're helping," Nolan Ray Doctor said, watching the hatchling's deliberate interference. This growing symbiosis between her human knowledge of the colony's layout and the Arcturian's ability to manipulate elect Doctor, Nick Systems created an advantage neither would have alone. But as they approached the central junction, even Nolan's tiny frame began to struggle with the narrowing passages. Metal scraped against her shoulders, forcing her to wriggle forward on her stomach. The hatchlings pressed uncomfortably beneath her. Dr. Carter and Dr. Kapoor hunched over a maintenance terminal, scrolling through colony architectural schematics. "There," Dr. Kapoor pointed. "Junction 42B connects the maintenance tunnels to the central atrium service corridor. If Nolan is moving through the maintenance system, she'll have to pass through it. And it's only 30 meters from the colony's primary broadcast system," Dr. Carter added, seeing the possibility. "We could reach all colonists simultaneously with the truth about Harlow's plans. If we get there before Harlow's forces secure or destroy it, Doctor." Kapoor said grimly, already disconnecting from the terminal. "We have less than 15 minutes before the mercenary vessel docks." At the auxiliary airlock, the unmarked vessel completed its docking sequence, bypassing standard protocols with administrative override codes. The airlock cycled open to reveal 6 figures in specialized tactical gear, not standard military but advanced corporate security, equipment optimized for specific capture scenarios. Their leader activated a direct channel to Director Harlow. "Extraction team on site. Deploy the neural disruptors." "Already in position," Harlow responded, voice tight with stress. "Be advised, we have complications. Adult Arcturians in orbit, colony systems compromised, and the specimens are mobile with a human child." "The human is irrelevant," came the cold reply. "We've successfully contained an adult Arcturian before. The crystalline resonance technology we extracted revolutionized quantum computing. These juvenile specimens are potentially even more valuable. Their neuroplasticity could allow direct interface with human systems." Nolan and the hatchlings reached a critical junction, where maintenance ducts intersected with the colony's primary power distribution network. The metal grate ahead should have led to a service corridor, but flashing lights from the other side revealed security forces already in position. "They've cut us off," she whispered, turning to try another route only to hear footsteps echoing from that direction as DREY were surrounded, trapped in a metal box with nowhere to go except through the power distribution barrier itself, a solid wall of conduits and circuitry that no human could pass. The hatchlings pressed Doctor against her, their telepathic connection intensifying as her fear spiked. Through the link came not just emotion, but understanding and impossible possibility. The hatchling's crystalline resonance could temporarily phase through certain materials if properly amplified. They had used this Doctor, ility in their egg stage, to absorb minerals from surrounding rock without breaking their shells. But for Nolan to phase with them would require complete telepathic synchronization, a level of connection far beyond what any human had attempted, risking permanent neural damage. "Is there any other way?" she asked them silently, already knowing the answer as security forces closed in from both sides. Dr. Carter and Dr. Kapoor reached the broadcast center simultaneously with Director Harlow himself, who arrived flanked by 4 security officers wearing the special communication units she'd noticed earlier. "Director Harlow," Dr. Carter called out, her voice carrying across the room to the colonists monitoring emergency channels. "You've activated the self-destruct sequence. You're working with corporate mercenaries to capture the Arcturian hatchlings at the expense of this entire colony." Harlow's expression hardened. "Dr. Carter is suffering from alien neural manipulation," he announced smoothly. "The Arcturians have demonstrated telepathic capabilities that can override human consciousness. She's a security threat, not a reliable witness." The accusation created visible doubt among the colonists and even some security personnel. Lines were being drawn, those loyal to Harlow versus those questioning his authority, creating a volatile standoff that mirrored the larger human Arcturian tension. In the maintenance junction, Nalan made her choice. She pressed her forehead against the hatchling's crystalline surfaces, surrendering completely to the telepathic connection. The sensation was overwhelming, like diving into an ocean of liquid light, her consciousness expanding beyond human limitations as the hatchling's crystalline structures extended to partially envelop her small body. The security forces converged from both directions, weapons raised only to witness something unprecedented. The human child and Arcturian hatchlings began to shimmer, their combined form becoming translucent, then transparent, then passing directly through the solid power distribution barrier as if it were mist. Nalan experienced the passage as a moment of impossible sensation, her body simultaneously solid and not, existing in multiple states as the Arcturian's crystalline resonance temporarily altered her physical properties. They emerged on the other side directly into the colony's central atrium, a vast public space where emergency shelters had gathered most colonists during the life support failures. Her appearance created an immediate sensation, a tiny human girl partially encased in luminescent crystalline structures that pulsed with color and light, standing at the center of the colony's main gathering place. All eyes turned toward this impossible sight, conversation stopping mid-sentence as colonists and security personnel alike tried to comprehend what they were seeing. Above the colony, the adult Arcturians detected the profound connection between Nalan and their hatchlings, a symbiosis unprecedented in their species' history. They responded immediately, redirecting their communication probes to converge on the central atrium. The crystalline structures descended through the atmospheric shield, arranging themselves in a perfect circle above the gathered colonists. Light erupted from the probes, creating a direct visual telepathic link visible to all. Through this connection, amplified by her bond with the hatchlings, Nalan broadcast the complete truth, images and emotions, and knowledge flowing outward in a wave that couldn't be denied or misinterpreted. Colonists saw Harlow's conspiracy, the Arcturians' peaceful intentions, Earth Corporation's previous exploitation, and the approaching mercenaries' true purpose. This moment of radical transparency forced all factions to acknowledge their positions just as the extraction team entered the atrium from the auxiliary corridor, specialized capture equipment at the ready. The mercenaries hesitated at the sight before them, hundreds of colonists united in understanding, standing with the child and hatchlings at their center, and above them, the unmistakable presence of the adult Arcturians, no longer hidden but fully revealed in all their crystalline majesty. The mercenary team entered the central atrium with practiced precision, their specialized capture equipment humming with charged energy. Colony security forces formed a defensive perimeter, weapons trained on both the mercenaries and Nalan, who stood at the center, her small frame partially encased in pulsing crystalline structures that spiraled around her arms and across her chest. "Stand down immediately," ordered the mercenary leader, a tall woman with cybernetic enhancements visible along her jawline. "We're here under corporate mandate to secure all xenobiological assets." her gaze fixed on Nalan and the hatchling. Neutralize the human-alien hybrid experiment and prepare for specimen extraction. Director Harlow stepped forward, hands raised in a placating gesture. There's been a misunderstanding. The girl discovered the specimen, nothing more. We can discuss proper compensation. There's no misunderstanding. The mercenary leader cut him off, activating a holographic display visible to everyone in the atrium. Our orders are explicit. Secure the assets at any cost and prepare for colony liquidation. Loyalists will be evacuated before we initiate structural collapse. Her eyes swept the room. The rest are considered acceptable casualties. A murmur rippled through the security forces as the mercenaries' words confirmed everything Nalan had transmitted through the Arcturian link. Colony personnel looked between their weapons and Director Harlow, doubt evident in their expert doctor, Ions. She's telling the truth, Nalan's voice rang out, surprisingly steady despite the crystalline structures pulsing around her. The corporation never intended this colony to survive once they confirmed Arcturian biological value. Director Harlow has known all along. The security chief lowered his weapon, turning to his team. Protect the civilians. Get them to emergency shelters. Without a glance at Harlow, he redirected his forces, abandoning the director where he stood. Harlow's face contorted with rage as he watched his authority disintegrate. He lunged toward a nearby control panel, smashing through the emergency access cover. If I can't have what I came for, no one will. His fingers flew across the interface, overriding safety protocols. Alarm klaxons blared as every screen in the colony flashed red with the same message. Self-destruct sequence initiated. 00, 15, 00 and counting. He's accelerated the sequence. Dr. Kapoor shouted from a monitoring station. 4 hours down to 15 minutes, there's no time for full evacuation. Panic erupted as colonists scrambled toward emergency exits. Through her enhanced connection, Nalan felt a surge of drive from above. The adult Arcturians, monitoring everything through their telepathic link, had made a decision. Their massive vessels were repositioning around the colony's P-Doctor meter, extending docking tubes toward emergency airlocks. They're offering evacuation, Nalan announced, her voice carrying over the chaos. The Arcturians are opening their ships to us. The mercenary leader's eyes narrowed at this unexpected development. She signaled to her technical specialist, who deployed a sleek device from his pack. Neural disruptors, calibrated for Arcturian biology, sever the telepathic connection. The device emitted a high-pitched whine as waves of energy pulsed toward Nalan. The partially recovered hatchling moved with startling speed, positioning itself between Nalan and the disruptor. Its translucent skin absorbed the waves, rippling with painful distortion, but the telepathic link remained intact. The fully recovered hatchling Celeste extended crystalline tendrils into the nearest terminal. Colony systems flicked Doctor, as Arcturian interface patterns merged with human technology. I have partial access, Dr. Kapoor called out, fingers flying across his console. The hatchling is creating pathways through systems I couldn't reach before. It's remarkable. The integration of Kry's Doctor line structures with our digital architecture is creating entirely new processing capabilities. Harlow laughed bitterly. It won't matter, I've implemented cascading encryption. Each attempt to access the self-destruct creates another layer of security. He backed toward a maintenance corridor. You can't stop what's coming. The countdown continued its relentless progression. 12:47. 12:46. Dr. Carter pushed through the crowd, medical scanner in hand. She froze momentarily at the sight of her daughter. Nalan's small body was now nearly half encased in alien crystalline structures, her eyes glowing with the same iridescent light as the hatchlings. For a heartbeat, fear flashed across Dr. Carter's face, then her medical training took over. She approached steadily, scanner raised. Nalan, I need to check your neural patterns. Her voice was professional but couldn't quite mask the maternal concern underneath. The scanner's display, filled with complex readings, Dr. Carter moved it carefully along the integration points where crystalline structures met human skin. Her expression grew increasingly troubled. "The symbiosis is creating severe neural stress patterns," she said, adjusting the scanner. "The telepathic connection and system integration are taxing your developing brain beyond safe parameters." She looked directly into her daughter's glowing eyes. "Maintaining this connection long enough to counter the self-destruct may cause permanent damage, sweetheart." Through the telepathic link, the adult Arcturians responded immediately. Nalan tilted her head, listening to something only she could hear. "They can help," she translated, voice strained. "The Arcturians can counteract the neural damage, but I would need to be aboard their vessel when the final disruption occurs." She looked at her mother, understanding dawning. "They're saying you need to choose send me with them to save me, or keep me here to try saving everyone else." Dr. Carter's professional composure cracked. She reached out, touching her daughter's face, half warm human skin, half cool crystalline structure. "Since your father died, I've kept you at arm's length," she whispered. "I was so afraid, Doctor, losing you too, that I stopped seeing how extraordinary you are." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. I trust you." Before Nalan could respond, a deafening explosion rocked the CDRNY. The mercenary team had targeted the primary power distribution node, plunging sections of the colony into darkness. Emergency lighting flickered on as life support systems switched to backup power. "At Doctor, ferric regulation failing," announced the colony AI. "Oxygen levels decreasing. Estimated depletion, 7 minutes." As colonists gasped for breath, Nalan felt something strange through the deepening telepathic bond, a memory not her own, but from the hatchling's ancestral knowledge. She saw Arcturian crystalline structures temporarily sustaining other life forms during space migration. "The crystals," she gasped, understanding blooming. "Just as I sustained the hatchlings, they can sustain us. Their crystalline structures can temporarily support human biological functions." Dr. Kapoor looked up from his console. "Director Harlow is accessing a hidden shuttle DRY. He's attempting to escape with portable data storage likely containing all the Arcturian biological analyses. Can you stop him?" Dr. Sked. "I can track him, but I'm not a security officer," Kapoor replied, frustration evident. A series of metallic clanks echoed through the corridor. The colony's maintenance robots, reprogrammed earlier by Dr. Kapoor to assist with medical care, converged on Harlow's position. Their manipulator arms extended, blocking his path to the shuttle. "Doctor, Airide code Alpha 7 Delta." Harlow shouted desperately. "Administrative privileges revoked," replied the lead robot in its flat, synthetic voice. "New primary directive: protect colony inhabitants." On the main screens, the countdown continued mercilessly. 0822, 0821. Nalan took a deep breath, decision crystallizing in her mind. "I'm not going to the Arcturian vessel," she announced. "We need a synchronized approach. The hatchlings can generate a localized phase shift field around the self-destruct mechanism. It would allow Dr. Kapoor to physically bypass the shielding and reach the manual override." "Nalan, that would require you to maintain the neural connection even longer," Dr. Carter protested. "Doctor, damage could be irreversible." "I know," Nalan said simply, "but it's the only way to save everyone." She looked at the hatchlings, then back to her mother. "Sometimes being small means you can reach places others can't. This is something only I can do." The coordinated operation began with 6 minutes remaining on the countdown. Dr. Kapoor navigated through maintenance tunnels, guided by Nalan's directions as she channeled the hatchling's phase shift field. The crystalline structures around her body pulsed with increasing intensity, veins of light as Dr. adding across her skin. The mercenaries launched a desperate final assault on the control room, but found themselves facing an unlikely Alliance colony security forces fighting alongside maintenance drones, the latter moving with unexpected tactical precision. Through the telepathic link, the adult Arcturians provided precise guidance. The override sequence requires simultaneous activation of 3 Separa Doctor mechanisms. We have encountered similar human security systems in previous contact scenarios. Dr. Kapoor's hands moved with surgical precision, following the Arcturian's instructions relayed through Nalan. Sweat beaded on his forehead as the countdown reached its final seconds. Initiating over-DRE sequence, he reported. 3, 2, 1. The countdown froze at 000007. Self-destruct sequence aborted, announced the colony AI. A collective sigh of relief swept through the colony, but the victory was short-lived for Nalan. As the immediate danger passed, she collapsed to the floor, the crystalline structures around her body flickering erratically. Dr. Carter was at her side instantly, medical scanner whirring. Neural pathways showing severe stress fracturing, she reported, voice tight with fear. Standard regenerative treatment won't be sufficient. The 2 hatchlings positioned themselves on either side of Nalan's small, still form. Their crystalline structures pulsed in synchronization, extending delicate tendrils that intertwined with those encasing Nalan. Dr. Carter watched in astonishment as her scanner displayed real-time neural repair occurring at the cellular level. They're channeling their healing capabilities directly into her system, she whispered. Doctor, regenerative technique is targeting damaged pathways with microscopic precision. She looked up at Dr. Kapoor. This is beyond anything in human medical science. Slowly, Nalan's eyes fluttered open, the iridescent glow fading to reveal her normal brown irises. Did it work? She asked weakly. Doctor. Carter nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Outside, the colony's main airlock cycled open. The adult Arcturians had landed their primary vessel and were initiating formal first contact. Through the telepathic link maintained by the hatchlings, their communication reached the assembled colony leadership. For centuries, our encounters with humans have ended in misunderstanding or exploitation, the Arcturian matriarch conveyed. Our methods of communication were too disparate for true comprehension. We exchanged information but never meaning. The telepathic impression shifted Doctor, an image of Nalan cradling the injured hatchling. This child created what governments and corporations could not, a bridge of genuine understanding built on compassion rather than utility. As recovery operations began, Dr. Carter addressed the combined human Arcturian Council. The Arcturians have explained their 300-year reproductive cycle and the importance of this planet's specific mineral composition for their hatching grounds. She displayed a holographic map showing the overlap between colony structures and Arcturian nesting sites. I propose we redesign our colony to coexist with the hatching grounds, she continued. We can establish protected zones for future Arcturian generations while developing shared technologies beneficial to both species. Instead of competing for resources, we can create something unprecedented, a truly symbiotic community. The colony administrator nodded slowly. After today, I think we've seen the potential of cooperation over exploitation. Later, as Nalan rested in the medical bay, the fully recovered hatchling communicated a significant decision through their telepathic bond. Doctor. Carter watched the silent exchange, the subtle color shifts of the hatchling's skin telling her a conversation was taking place. Celeste wants to stay with me, Nalan explained, using the name she'd given the hatchling, as an ambassador, but the other hatchling needs to return with the adults to complete its development. She looked to the Arcturian matriarch. Is that possible? The matriarch's telepathic response carried surprised acceptance. The adaptations both hatchlings have developed through human contact are unprecedented. We had not considered such an arrangement, but we recognize the unique bond formed. A ripple of blue-green acknowledgement passed through her translucent skin. We respect both biological necessity and emotional attachment. This solution honors both. Director Harlow and the captured mercenaries faced colonial justice, their corporate conspiracy fully exposed. The Arcturians provided additional records of previous exploitation attempts, revealing a pattern spanning decades. Rather than focusing SODRY on punishment, the colony leadership established new protection protocols for future contact, scenarios, ethical guidelines that prioritized mutual respect and transparent communication. The protocols will be named the Nalin Principles, announced the colony administrator. A reminder that compassion should guide our first steps with any new species we encounter. 1 year later, Nalin, slightly taller but still the smallest human in her class, led a group of wide-eyed children through the newly established Arcturian Human Cultural Center. Beside her wow doctor, Celeste, now adolescent and nearly twice Nalin's height, crystalline structures elegantly framing its more mature form. "This is where we keep the knowledge repositories," Nalin explained, gesturing to towering crystalline formations that pulsed with light as Celeste interfaced with them. They contain thousands of years of Dr. Turian history and science. Celeste helps translate them into something we can understand. Through the center's transparent dome, ships from both Speed Dr. S could be seen docking at the expanded colony, now a hub for diplomatic and scientific exchange. Dr. Carter, wearing the insignia of the Xenobiology Medical Division she now headed, watched from the observation deck as her daughter expertly fielded questions from the children. "How did it all start?" asked one small boy, looking between Nalin and Celeste with wonder. Nalin smiled, exchanging a glance with her alien friend. "It started with a tiny human girl who found an injured alien hatchling and decided to help. She reached up to touch Celeste's crystalline appendage. I didn't know it would change everything. I just knew something was hurt and needed care." Dr. Carter felt a presence beside her and turned to find the Arcturian matriarch observing the scene. "Your daughter has taught us something profound about your species," came the telepathic communication. "We had encountered human technology, human weapons, human commerce, but never human compassion. It is perhaps your greatest strength." Dr. Carter nodded, watching as Nalin demonstrated to the children how she had first treated Celeste's injuries with improvised tools and gentle hands. "Sometimes," Dr. Carter replied, "the smallest humans make the biggest difference in the universe." Overhead, a new group of Arcturian vessels entered orbit, their crystalline structures catching the light of the system's sun. They had returned not as wary strangers but as welcomed partners, their hatching grounds now protected by the same humans who had once unknowingly threatened them. And at the center of it all stood Nalin, still small, still young, but now recognized across two civilizations as the child whose simple act of compassion had forever changed the course of interstellar relations. Not through grand policy or advanced technology, but through the uniquely human decision to care for a creature in need, regardless of its origin among the stars.